Good morning, everyone. Good
morning.
afternoon.
Morning.
I hope everyone can hear me. So what we're going to try and do today is we're going to mute everyone except when the panelists are talking. So I'm going to unmute John, Carolyn, and Dean McCaskill. And then if you've got any questions, please tap them in via your text. Maybe just put your name there. I'm just going to go hi, everyone, so that you've got that. Did everyone get that message?
Yes.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, right. And then I'll filter the questions as we go, I guess. That will save, I guess, some of the overriding talking and bits and pieces. So let's go. All right. Okay, so firstly, good morning or good afternoon and welcome. This is our first live Q&A session on the coronavirus and franchising. There's been lots of things going on and around the world, and I'm not sure if you've heard the updates from last night on the latest and the numbers around the world. So I thought I'd just update you on where they sit. China, at the moment, so total number of cases reported till last night was just under 82,000, followed by Italy at 63,000. USA had 43,000. Now the USA have had 9,800 new cases compared to Italy's only 4,000. Then we go all the way down to Australia. Australia has only 1,888 live cases, with only 278 new ones yesterday. And a total deaths at this moment for Australia sits at 7. So we're the only country in the top 75 under 10. So there's some numbers for you. So let's talk about our panelists. I think I sent everyone their bios. So please make welcome John D'Orazio from Walker Wayland. He'll be talking to us about our accounting and all the things related to accounting and what's out there for rebates. We've got Dean McCaskill from BDA, our leasing specialist. He hopes to shed some light on some of the leasing inquiries and issues surrounding franchisors. Carolyn Megan. Carolyn's a partner at Hodgkin Henley Lawyers, also a specialist in employment law. So she joins us. Welcome, Carolyn. And last but not least, myself, Director of BDA, talking about strategy, operations, and the things around us that we hear and see what's going on around the world. All right, so maybe let's just kick off a little bit of John. John, can you please, if I get this right, where are you, John? Can you please give us a little bit of an update, a 2-minute update on everyone and what you're seeing out there? Now, where are you, John? John. Go, John, the floor is yours.
Got me there, Mark? Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. It's certainly been a hectic couple of weeks for us, fielding all these sorts of calls, so it's a good opportunity to get with a few people at once. So thanks for having me on.
No problem, my pleasure.
Probably a couple of the questions that we quite often are getting called for and asked about is, how do I actually claim some of the rebates? The ATO is certainly fighting a losing battle there in trying to get everything up to date, but they have got now a dedicated coronavirus website that you can go on, which has some good questions and frequently asked questions and answers there. So that's a good starting point for anyone who doesn't know what to do. But essentially with the rebate that everyone would have heard about, which is the grant of up to $100,000, that will typically come through your next business activity statement. When you lodge that, you don't have to apply for it. They'll automatically do it. The only ones that might have some trouble with that is those employers that do employ people, but they're not required to withhold anything from their employees. they're ones that the ATO is still working through, trying to work out how they handle that situation where they give you a 10 grand minimum rebate. So there's a few of those options around. There's some instant asset write-offs for people as well, which has been lifted up to $150,000. I don't know how relevant that's going to be for a lot of small businesses at this point in time. The ATO is giving extensions on payment dates. Now, I want to stress to everyone, make sure you still lodge everything on time. It's not a deferral on lodgement. It's more a deferral on payment that you can get. I did read an article this morning that the various accounting bodies are getting together to try and get a blanket extension on lodgements.
Right.
I don't think that will really impact businesses too much, but it's more getting in contact with the ATO, changing your payment arrangements. If you're due a refund or you don't have to pay tax in the 2020 year, then I suggest you contact the ATO, and if you've made PAYG instalments on your income tax, then I suggest you try and get those refunded as well. So there are a couple of the cash sort of components that are out there. Then in terms of finance, the government is backing small business with 50% of cash flow lending up to $250,000. I haven't seen any banks that have actually come out with any processes in place to be able to do that. So that's something that maybe Chris might be able to help us with a bit later. But yeah, I think that's probably about it, really. If you're in the payroll tax thresholds, you know, you can get $17,500 back from the state government, and they'll defer the payment of any other payroll tax until after July 1, and they've increased the threshold there. So there are a couple of the things. I'm not sure if you wanted me to go over anything else, but in terms of individuals, you can access some superannuation early, 10 grand this side of June and 10 grand in July. If you've made redundant or stood down from your employer, and there's extra payments obviously. Yep. So there's a fair bit there.
Great, and we had probably a statement here from Dean Newman. So thank you, Dean. I think everyone's seen that. I think they ATO are probably putting on more resources to help with all of the overflow, but it's going to take time. We had a question from Joe. As you can see there, John, do you want to just give us a 30-second answer on that one?
What's Joe said going forward?
Yep.
I think for business, I think it's a really good opportunity for them to reassess how they do business.
Yep.
And going forwards, you know, I'll talk about our business specifically. At the moment, we've got everybody working from home, so it begs the question: do we actually need a physical shop front to run our business? So
yeah,
it certainly creates an opportunity for businesses to either reconfigure their operations or redesign what they're actually selling. So I've had a client who pretty much lost 80% of their business overnight, and they've turned around and basically put a subscription model in place and uploaded all of their classes to the internet, and they're promoting their business that way. So
yeah, changing landscape.
Yeah, they're adapting, and I think if you don't adapt and become agile and nimble, then it's going to be a hard task to recover. And it will take people a long time to get over this. This is not a small blip in the economy. It's going to take a serious amount of effort from everybody to get back to where they were and then recover the losses that they're going to sustain over the next few months.
Okay, let's hold it there, and we'll come back to you. I'm sure we'll have a lot more questions around, you know, do we need to pay things and what's happening in that rebate space. Dean McCaskill, BDA Property Retail Leasing Specialist. Dean, can you just give us an overview of what you're seeing out there and what type of deals that are being made now for survival mode, I guess? Sorry, Dean, we can't quite hear you there. No. Dean. Where is Dean? Dean, what's your call sign? Sorry, hang on 2 seconds. Hello, Dean? Try again.
There we are.
I can hear you. Hello.
Now it tells me I've been unmuted by the host.
Oh, come on, host. Please.
So, okay. Thanks, Mark. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Look, the situation, giving a lot of thought in the last 48 hours to what I was going to say this morning, and my advice has changed daily over the past 10 days. And the primary thing, my primary piece of advice for commercial property users right at the moment is do nothing. It's a moving feast each day. There is the possibility that the federal government is going to announce some changes to the law, which will basically quarantine commercial tenants from being evicted or having their tenure compromised in any way by not paying rent. And the reason I say this is a moving feast is 10 days ago, which would have been Monday last week, I'd seen a couple of offers from landlords offering tenants 25% discount on the rent rebate until this crisis or restrictions on movement is over. Then at the end of last week, that had one of the major landlords, certainly in Australia, but operating in WA, unilaterally offered all their tenants a 50% discount on the base/net rent for the duration of the crisis. Now, my advice to my clients in those situations is do not accept the rebate. I expect that a far more radical solution is required, and that can only be done by the federal government. And I think they've already started talking about it. They haven't actually done it yet, but there will be some kind of relief for commercial tenants. The difficulty with what I see going around in the marketplace at the moment is that particularly retail tenants, and this is where the franchisee holds the lease in their own name, they get bombarded with centre management or property managers who are looking to just limit their liability. They just want to crystallise the liability, so they are trying to commit tenants to releasing landlords from liability, whatever that may be, because I can't actually find anything in most commercial leases that I deal with that even contemplates a situation like this, where by government edict, essentially a vast chunk of the retail industry has been shut down. As I say, most lease documents and agreements don't even contemplate that situation. So I think there will be a statutory solution very quickly from the government and or the state government. It was interesting that in what I read with regard to the national cabinet consideration was this push for relief from commercial rents has come from WA. So that was encouraging. So that's what I think will be my advice for the immediate future, and that is the next week or two is do nothing. Obviously, we have to mitigate costs and deal with staff issues, but do nothing, commit to nothing, sign nothing until there is a clear direction from the government, because we're well outside the bounds of what would be considered normal in a commercial lease.
And Dean, if I can just throw a question in there for you. So if I'm a franchisee responsible for my lease and I'm struggling to pay my staff, are you suggesting maybe we can halter any payments to the landlord at this stage?
But look, essentially that's what I am saying, is if your business has been impacted, and most will have, there is no real protection under the lease for you, and similarly there's no protection for the landlord, because most leases do not contemplate this situation.
Sure.
So look, the simple advice is do nothing, and that includes paying anything, because there will be some kind of national relief from forfeiture legislation, however that works, and so that will work on the basis that everything just gets held in place. So that's what I'm saying. Just hold everything in place with regard to your property dealings.
Okay.
Mark, can I inject here?
Yes. Come on in.
So From the Real Estate Institute and what they're working with the government over this weekend is
Sorry,
that, you know,
sorry. Can I
obviously,
just introduce? Sorry, Craig Abbott from Rain and Horn, the general manager there. Welcome, Craig.
thank you. So what the Real Estate Institute is working with the government, they've been doing it since over the weekend, since the last meeting with the Prime Minister, is that rent will go ahead. Everybody is still required to pay rent. There's no free rent period or nothing. This is even on the commercial side. What they're proposing is that the rent, if a person, either in a commercial or residential, needs rent assistance, they will have to apply for it. And the reason behind that is so we don't slow down the whole system on both sides, and the middleman being a real estate. So renters will still pay, property managements will still collect rent, and owners will still get distribution. They're just working on setting up that process, so you have to claim hardship to be able to get the assistance, if that makes sense to everybody.
Okay.
Yeah. The problem that we're going to have, and this is a long-term problem, I think, is that for many of these businesses, and I'm thinking, for example, I have a raft of clients in gyms, their cash flow has just stopped. So long term, there are going to be a lot of people who cease trading and will not be coming back. And I think that could be a substantial component of the retail property industry,
Yeah, you're right.
particularly shopping centres. And it's what they won't be able to deal with is the accruing rent. So there are, as I say, unilateral offers of rent rebates coming from major landlords, but I do not think they're enough. The applications that I have written recently have all been seeking rebate of the entire base net rent.
You have to, sorry. So just again, inject. You have to be very careful of that, because when we're talking rebate, or if the landlord's discounts the rent or anything, because there's an insurance ramifications of that. If something goes pear-shaped, which more than likely it's going to go high, they might not be covered by insurance. So again, the Real Estate Institute, with working with the government, is trying to go to the insurance companies and express, what are they going to do? So, you have to keep your owners assured that this might not be the best thing, and like you said, hold off until we get guidance.
Yeah.
I think that's the important thing. Is just hold off for the moment. My advice is don't sign anything. Don't commit to anything. We just have to wait and see for the immediate future. That's the next few weeks.
Yeah, that's the best call. That's the best call.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. I just got one question from Nick Sergio. Nick asks, should the franchisors negotiate a rent discount or relief for the whole network, Dean, despite who the leaseholder is? Do you want to answer that in 60 seconds?
Yes, I actually will have an answer for that. If you've got a large portfolio of property, rarely does one size fit all. It has been my experience that portfolio-wide breaks or rebates on rental agreements will rarely work properly because of that. There's a vast difference between someone on a high street in a store in Northbridge and someone in a Westfield shopping centre in the East Coast. They might be the same brand, circumstances are entirely different. So it's good to talk to each of the individual landlords, whoever the leaseholder is, but portfolio wide, that's difficult. It's problematic to make that work.
Yeah, okay. And we just had a last question from Jeremy. Jeremy Neal asks about should franchise partners basically, if they've got the cash flow, pay the money and then look for a claim later? Jeremy, look, tough one. I think Dean would probably agree with me. If you've got the cash flow, make as much as you can and just keep everyone at bay. But it's going to get tighter and tighter as the weeks go. So acting in good faith, I guess, that party, if you've got a little bit of cash, try and do what you can. But, everyone appreciates the dollars are going to be spread thin. We're going to have to leave you there, Dean, and we'll come back to you. Carolyn Megan from Hodgkin Hanley, welcome.
Hello, welcome all.
Great. Carolyn's a specialist not only in franchising and commercial law, but also in employment practices. So we've dragged her along to handle the tough questions. And we've got one here from the guys at 1-2 Round. I'm not sure if it's Simon or Keely. So you can see that question there. Carolyn, if you can get to that in a second, but could you please just give us an update on what you're hearing, seeing, and feeling that's going on in your space?
Oh, look, I mean, it is a moving feast, as everyone has been identifying. One of the issues that everyone is concerned about is their employment obligations. And unfortunately, like a lot of things in the law, there's no one answer. Every situation is going to be different because our workplace legislation and common law rules are very complex, and there are always going to be issues around whether your business falls within the federal employment space or within the state employment space, and that does have a lot of impact on the rights of employers and employees in these sorts of situations. I expect, but I haven't heard anything yet, that there may be some legislative intervention in relation to employment because of this just being unprecedented, and the effects on both employers and employees being unprecedented. But nothing has sort of flowed through in that respect as yet. And I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but I can't see the question that you mentioned.
Oh, okay. It's let me read it out to you then.
Sure, thank you.
The government's relief package appears to provide support for small businesses and employee staff only. Maybe this is more of a question for John, but it's suggesting what's
I have seen that question. Yeah, sorry, I thought that was perhaps might have been more for John than for me, but because I'm not sure what, if any, support packages would apply to sole traders, owner operators and contractors in an employment context. John, as I say, John may have more information in relation to that than I do.
John, are you still with us?
Yeah, I can. I was just waiting for the appropriate time.
Sure.
No, I think the second round of measures that the government released do actually apply to small businesses and sole traders.
Yep.
So you still are eligible for the 10 to 50. Not 10 to 50. It's up to that $100,000 amount.
Yes.
If you're by 80% or more, then I believe you're entitled to go to Centrelink and ask for those benefits as well. I was just trying to find the exact part where it said that in my notes, but I can't find it off quickly. So there is some benefits there for small businesses and sole traders. You can certainly go to Centrelink and get those top-up benefits that they're mentioning. No, I think it's not even 80%. I think if your income's dropped by 20%, then you're entitled to go there. So
okay, great. And Carolyn, are you fielding questions about, oh, geez, I've had to make my staff redundant or let them go, and I can't pay their entitlements, and they're chasing me. How do I deal with this situation?
Yeah, look, I haven't had that specific question, but certainly I think a lot of people have perhaps not yet made the decisions as to what to do with their staff, or if they have made those decisions, it's not sort of filtering through to lawyers. It's just sort of wait and see if the employees make a claim. What people are probably very aware of is unfair dismissal laws.
Yes.
And ordinarily, if there is a basis to suggest that you have been unfairly dismissed, you can then make a claim to Fair Work. And there are limitations on people who are entitled to make claims for unfair dismissal.
Yes.
But what is going to flow from our current circumstances is going to be a real question of if people are either made redundant, and there's always a question when a redundancy occurs, is it truly a redundancy? And if it's not truly a redundancy, it's an unlawful termination. But ultimately, when considering whether something, a termination is unfair, the court looks at the individual circumstances. And I think there's going to be a lot of weight to an argument that, given the current economic circumstances, terminations that would otherwise be unfair are not going to be held to be unfair in the current circumstances.
Yeah. Okay.
But I suppose that the message I would give to anyone who is an employer is keep your lines of communication open with your staff, and it's always open for you to reach alternative arrangements with your staff if they agree to them. And what we find generally, especially in this sort of situation, if staff are aware that it's a reduction in hours or no hours at all, or other significant adjustments to their work situation, you're likely to get agreement from your staff in these circumstances. So rather than taking sort of the drastic steps of redundancies, which then impose cash flow problems, because you've got to pay out entitlements when a redundancy is made. And if you terminate, the risk of unfair dismissal, and you also have to pay out in statutory entitlements if you terminate an employee as well.
Yeah.
That really you need to look at your business as a whole and communicate with your staff as a whole. And because also we've got to look at the long term, and who knows how long this is going to last. You're going to need staff when you hit the ground running again.
Yes. Yes.
So you've got to be mindful of that. I've just seen a question about enforcing leave as a first step. Now, what I should say about this, and it's typical of a lawyer, that the rules are different depending on whether you fall under the Commonwealth workplace situation or whether you fall under the state. Now, very generally speaking, if your business operates as a company, then you fall within the Commonwealth employment sphere, and you're not in the federal sphere, in the Commonwealth sphere. You can require people to take leave if it's reasonable to do so.
Okay.
And I think in these sorts of circumstances in our current climate, there's probably a good argument that it is reasonable to require staff to take annual leave. And I should say annual leave is treated very differently from long service leave. Long service leave is dealt with in our state system, and you can't force people to take long service leave. But having said that, this is why I say communication is key, because while you can't require people to do it, if you communicate with people and say, look, we would appreciate it if you took leave, then, you know, you can do that by agreement.
Okay, we might have to leave it there, Carolyn, and we'll come back to you on that topic. All right, so now I'm going to switch hats and talk a little bit about strategy and operations from what we know here at BDA and through our contacts around the world. So we've been in contact with some of our friends in Canada and also in the US about franchising, and these are some of the headlines, if you like. So not only in Australia, but around the world, field support staff have been decimated. So we know in Australia, some of the field management ratios, which are in food and service, is around about one franchise manager to about 13 to 15. They're now looking at 1 to 30 or 40. And in some groups, they've removed state managers, they've removed regional managers, and they've removed state-based personnel to provide support. We believe that obviously that's a red flag to the franchisees who are looking for credible leadership and strong leadership from the franchisor at this point of time. So when we hear and see that, we start to wonder about the franchise systems and the best interests. We're also hearing on the other side of the fence system-wide relief for franchise fees and marketing relief, marketing fund relief. We know of one system in the US that has actually returned the marketing fund dollars back to the franchisees after a vote, which happened through their normal franchise chains. They've returned all the marketing funds and said that they're going to set up their own portals and take it out of the franchisor's kitty. Business support is relatively high amongst franchise groups. So franchise groups are going to using the technology through videos, through video hookups. They're still looking at P&Ls through the online channels and through the emails. The face-to-face visits for quality, etc., have been reduced and almost diminished to zero. But they're still using technology to say, hey, look, take photos, show me around, use your camera. What do you need help in? What's your staffing? And I'm going to bring Dean Newman in a moment to talk a little bit about his situation and what they've done. So I hope you don't mind, Dean. We'll call you in a second. And we just heard from Carolyn about holidays. So there's quite a few groups that have basically asked people to take leave so that they can get their casual staff to do some work and try to keep the workforce active across the whole scheme of thing. The underlining current from what I'm hearing and seeing out there is communication, being on the front foot, showing franchisees that if you need support, if you need help, don't worry about all the noise outside, come to us first. We've set up our HR, we've set up our sanitation practices, we've set up our hotlines, everything that we can do to help you inside. We would love you to get information from us, and if you've got queries, throw it at us. Now, Dean Newman, Dean, can you just talk a little bit about what your franchisor has been doing? Because I think it's a little special from what is going on around at the moment. And I wouldn't mind if you could just share a little bit and just start by who you are and where you're from, please, Dean.
Yeah, no worries. I'm Dean Newman. I'm part of the Back in Motion Health Group. So we're a group of physio practices around Australia and New Zealand. Head office is over in Melbourne, so we're a little bit isolated. I'm over here in WA. Basically, the franchise has been fantastic, sort of very, very open lines of communication, sending out regular updates through our intranet. We're getting regular sort of, financial modelling sort of advice from the finance side of things, which means we can actually start doing spreadsheets. And I've actually shared some of those with Mark. And I know for a fact that, the franchisor has no problems at all sort of sharing that. They've hosted industry-wide webinars because they want to actually see the entire physio profession come out of this on the other side, rather than, they're looking obviously out for us as franchisees, but they realise that it's the industry as a whole that actually needs a whole lot of help.
Wonderful. That's great. And Dean, do you think that that's given, yourself and a couple of the guys some confidence that, hey, my franchisor's got my back?
Oh, absolutely. It's, I don't think there's ever been a shadow of doubt about that since this whole thing sort of, started to kick off. They have come out very openly and said they want to see every single practice that's part of the group come out of this on the other side.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you for that update. Now, Sally, if you're there, would you be happy to share what you're doing with your Soul Origin group, please?
I'm not part of Soul Origin group.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You're from Hudson?
Yes, I'm just an accountant.
Ah, okay. Sorry. I thought we had a different Sally there. So you're just an accountant. Don't say just an accountant. You're here to learn. What are you seeing? Let me put you on the spot. Sally, what are you seeing?
Well, everyone's panicking. It's a scary world we're moving into, and nobody really knows how to handle it.
Yeah, so
Very
true.
hard to keep abreast of all the changes
Yep, and it's just day by day, right?
day by day.
Day by day. Okay, great. Well, let's open it to the floor. If anyone's got some questions now for our panelists, I think we've got a couple for John coming through regarding rebates again. So while people are tapping away, if you've got something you want to say, John, can I just talk a little bit more about this $250,000 banking fund, I guess, relief for small business? Is it your understanding that it's only for loans, business loans currently in place, or is it I've got cash flow issues, I don't have a loan per se on anything, I can go and claim and try and get this 6 months rent rebate or free
No,
period?
it is specifically for working capital type. So they don't want you to go and borrow that to refinance an existing facility. That's certainly not what it's about. So if you've got that mindset, I don't believe you'll get too far with the banks on that.
Okay, but if I said, right, I've got all this debt, I need some working capital, and as long as I can meet the banking financing criteria, my guess still applies, then I've got half a chance.
You've got half a chance. But what they'll be doing is they'll be looking at serviceability.
Yep.
So that won't change, and I guess they'll be basing that on the past performance of the business.
Yep.
So if past performance can sustain that borrowing, you're not going to be able to get that funding going forwards.
Okay.
So they are red tape, but again, from talking to the banks, they don't have any specific policies in place yet, and it's a bit of a on the run type situation that they're finding themselves in.
Right. Okay, we've got about 5 or 6 minutes left, and Gareth, I don't know, Gareth Lane, are you live with us at the moment?
I am indeed. Hello,
Great.
everyone.
Hello, good morning, and happy birthday.
Thank you very kindly for that. Not doing what I would plan to be doing, but I am here.
Pleasure. Gareth, can I just get you to give us an update in 60 seconds or less on what you're seeing out there in the digital marketing space, which, you know, your company, Concise Digital, does a lot of work in?
Yeah, very interesting question. I'll try and keep it 60 seconds. Just for people that don't know who we are, we're a sort of mid-sized digital agency. About 50% of our client base are e-commerce. The other 50% are in bricks and mortar type stores with a website that kind of facilitates their business. I had one of the saddest days I've ever had on Monday. Some clients that I've looked after since I started Concise about 15 years ago completely shut up their store. A gym, for example, a business broker, a massage therapist, all very good, solid businesses just completely shut overnight, due to no reason other than a government requirement. That was pretty sad.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of things, we've got e-commerce clients who have done ridiculous record numbers. There's a large gym fitness chain that we look after who sells home fitness equipment. They did what they would normally do in a month in 2 days last weekend online, and all their stock is. So we're going from one end of emotional distress and pain to people absolutely killing the pig, in the short term. So we're seeing, it's very fascinating what's happening. We're very happy to help anyone who needs urgent changes to websites or anything like that. Anyone needs help with working from home or remote. We've got a team in 6 countries, and we've been doing it this way for about 10 years. So we've got lots of experience. If anyone gets stuck, very happy to help anyone we can at the moment. Hopefully the share market will stabilize, because I think the share market is a leading indicator of the economy and the confidence. It seems to have done all right in the last day or two, but it's still substantially down on everything else. And obviously that's going to flow through. The state of the Aussie dollar as well, that's had catastrophic effects for so many businesses that are importing. If you're using the bank to transfer money overseas, there are much better opportunities at the moment for rates and things. I think the good operators that we've got, it's been a really good time for them to sort of rethink some of their models. I'm not sure who mentioned it, but I think it might have been you, John. You know, people asking questions whether or not they think they really need that office anymore, or they need that, you know, retail outlet. I think that it'll be survival of the fittest, and I think our general economy will change substantially over the next couple of months.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. And I'm going to have to leave it there. Thank you, Gareth, and happy birthday for the rest of the day from all of us.
Thanks,
here.
Mark. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Pleasure. Chris White. Chris White has just tapped in and is suggesting about the loans. Chris, are you there? Can you just expand for about 30 seconds on that, please?
I am, yes. Hi, everyone. So look, there is a lot more information still to come about this 250 grand loan. It is a measure on top of current relief packages around repayment holidays. So just broadly, every bank, or generally every bank, has agreed that they'll provide a 6-month repayment holiday on a borrower's current loans if they have been affected. Following that, the government is going to guarantee basically an unsecured loan. So anyone who qualifies can obtain up to 250 grand unsecured. The government will provide a guarantee for 50% of that, but the lender still needs to assess the position and agree that you are someone who in normal circumstances would be able to afford to repay whatever you borrow within 3 years. Well, actually within 2.5 years, because as John pointed out, yes, they're providing also an initial 6 months without repayments. So it is a great tool for a business that has a need and capacity. It's not going to be for everyone. And I would suggest initially that if anyone out there or your clients have any issues with cash flow at the moment, you get straight onto your lender and ask about a 6-month or 3 to 6 month hold on all repayments. That does include, in a lot of cases, credit cards, car loans, personal loans, business loans, pretty much anything you've borrowed from a lender, and it's generally most lenders. You will probably qualify pretty easily once the bank gets to respond to you, because they're all being inundated at the moment.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Chris. Now, I'm mindful of the time. It's bang on 10:45, so I'm happy to continue for another 5 or 10 minutes if our panelists are and if our viewers are. Is everyone happy to continue?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yep, great. Okay, so let's keep going. Dean, have you got any more that you want to talk about? Any specifics about leasing?
I was going to say, which Dean?
Oh, sorry, you, Dean. Dean McCaskill.
I do. I think that the relief packages I'm hearing all involving loans. The trouble with a large chunk of my retail clients is that they're actually technically insolvent now. The moment they cease trading, they become insolvent, and it's part of the vast change that's going to go on here. Customers are going to get used to the fact that they don't have to visit bricks and mortar stores. There are other vectors which they can get their goods and services. And some retailers are going to, or commercial property users are going to discover that they don't need that shop and they don't need that office, as we've discussed, if they're still around. And I think that there is a strong commercial imperative for all the parties, that including, in this case, landlords, franchisors, franchisees, the lessees, to work together to make it possible for those businesses to reopen and commence trading again once this has passed, whenever that is. The alternative is that those businesses will not be back. And I still think there will be between 10 to 15% of retail businesses in shopping centres that have had to close for the duration will not be back. And that's because that's about the percentage that are usually trading on the edge in any large centre anyway. But there is a strong commercial imperative for everybody involved to deal with it, and a business's usual attitude, which we've seen from a couple of landlords, not many, but a couple of large institutional landlords who've taken a business as usual approach, that will lead to devastation. Those shopping centres are going to suffer badly because, as I say, people are technically insolvent. That's where I think there needs to be some kind of government intervention, and I believe there needs to be relief from forfeiture for a set period. But we'll see what happens from that point of view. There is a strong commercial imperative to resolve between the parties.
Yep, so true. And Carolyn, did you have any more you want to add on the legal side of franchisees running to you and going, I don't know where I stand, I've got renewals coming up, I've got everything under the sun falling down, let alone this coronavirus. What do I do?
I mean, I think following on from what Dean and some of the others have said, I think at the moment people have got to sort of hold fire and wait to see what statutory interventions happen. Dean was just mentioning insolvency. There have already been changes to insolvency and bankruptcy laws as regards the ability for people to chase companies or rules around statutory demands and similar things, and putting companies into liquidation. Everyone will be aware leases normally have provisions around what happens if tenant goes into liquidation or is made bankrupt. So those statutory interventions will help in that respect. But also, as Dean said, there needs to be another step which relates to relief against forfeiture. The other thing to keep in mind is, as well as what your lease says, there are common law protections that people may be able to call on, but I wouldn't be taking any drastic steps at this stage. There are common law concepts of frustration which might apply to bring different agreements to an end. Force majeure clauses, if there are any. Potentially, this amounts to a force majeure under a contract, which would then allow a person to bring it to an end. So, but I think the short point is, don't do anything drastic, even with your employees and others. Don't try not to do anything drastic unless you absolutely have no choice. Keep the lines of communication open. Reduce your cash flow, your costs, even if that means negotiating with employees to reduce their hours by agreement, just to keep things running until there's more certainty.
Great. Okay, now I'm going to throw to field support. So Michael Savage from Luxottica. Michael's the franchise support specialist projects guru, from what I hear. Michael, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Great, yes we can. Michael, good afternoon and welcome, or good morning. Can you just give us a little bit of an update of what you're seeing at the grassroots levels with franchisees and your head office and that sort of craziness, I guess?
Yeah, obviously franchise partners are asking how we can assist as a franchisor. And of course, some of those things we're able to respond to now, but some of those things, like everyone else, we're waiting for legislation and events to unfold. So the main important thing is that we're putting out daily updates, and it seems to be working well. There's no panic right now because we're just keeping them informed with what's done, what's coming, and things that are work in progress. Okay, and are your franchisees, if I want to use the word scared, about what's going on, and how are you dealing with that? Yeah, I think everyone's scared. So far, though, everyone's been very pragmatic because they understand it's still unwinding, and we're keeping our communications up. We're also letting them know where we can support right now. Like our leasing team is assuring them all that we're right in negotiations right now with all the landlords. We haven't announced it yet, but we are very close to getting approval for the same type of marketing levy relief that you mentioned the US franchise was doing. So we're giving them some good news. We're looking internally at how we can delay any other sort of impending deductions that are coming as well. But it's unfolding. So yeah, but the main thing is keep communication up. And so far, everyone's been very pragmatic without it getting out of control yet. Great. Good. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Janet Bannon, are you there?
Janet, are you with us? I can barely hear you. Hello, Janet. No? Okay, maybe not. All right, so let's take another question. Are there any other questions that you want to have thrown at our panelists or even myself? Now's your chance. So what I'm hearing, oh, Janet, are you there with us? Can you hear me, Janet? Okay, do you have a microphone, Janet? Oh, great question from the birthday boy. Anyone, anything, what's fun? Anyone doing anything fun at the moment? And how to win? I'm sure you've seen a few YouTube clips, and I'm sure you've seen the one where the mum's working from home, and the photograph is she's sitting at her desk and papers everywhere, and then the camera backs off, and you see on the floor the 3 children that she's got with their mouths taped, their hands taped, and their legs all taped together. You know, that's so funny, working from home and trying to get things done. Crazy stuff out there. Nick, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
welcome. Nick Sturgio, franchise consultant extraordinaire, been around franchising for a while. Nick, generally in these times of need, franchisees are looking for some leadership. What are you seeing out there now as far as, you know, are franchisees able to respond to this, and where are they going to get advice?
Well, unfortunately, since every day is different, everybody is trying to figure it out how to make it day by day.
Yes.
So I totally agree with the people that have already said that we need to keep the channels of communication open, because every day is different. So try to be next to them, try to hear them, and try to pass the information from one to each other. So as long as we work together, we can make it happen. I think that's it.
Yeah, no, great. And are you seeing anything out there as far as people's optimism, pessimism, or the, you know, like I remember when the GFC hit, there were quite a few businesses that just says we don't get involved in the GFC, we're bucking the trends. Are you seeing any businesses out there or franchise groups trying to do that?
Last week was really bad for the food industry, as I have experienced the dine-in area to getting smaller and smaller and smaller,
Yes.
and eventually it was vanished.
Yes.
So at the moment, they try to figure it out how we can fix that. So we are on the fix point. Like, should I go on a delivery thing? Will take out going to help me? So everybody is trying to find how they can survive. So this is the survival period now.
Yes. No, you're right. Great. Wonderful. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for your comments.
You're welcome.
Now, John, are you still with us?
Yep.
John, can we talk a little bit about, let's fast forward 6 months, and let's talk about some industry grants that we at BDA, we're still wanting to see. And I guess I'm talking about supply chain. I'm talking about the car manufacturers and parts and things like that are going to slow down now, those parts that have been made out in China or overseas. Can you shed some light on manufacturing, stimulus packages? Can you shed some light on what companies are doing with supply chain, so that you know, we can do things here on our own home soil?
Very good questions, Mark, and ones that I haven't got some answers to. So can't really give you any light, but I can certainly say if these businesses are now going back and reinvigorating their manufacturing, then I think it's a great opportunity for Australia to get back into that space, and it will certainly bring some innovation, which I've heard is one of the things that businesses need to do. Panelists today and other people commenting. So the more innovation we have, the better, and there's certainly some grants around for research and development type opportunities. They're already in place, so certainly look at those for sure. As for new ones that are coming up, I have not done the research to find out what's available for them. but I'm happy to.
And I'm going to give you the heads up on that to start investigating. We're dealing with a couple of master franchise license arrangements where we've said, hang on, let's look at your supply chain and let's look at what you have to get from the parent company, the franchisor overseas. And this comes back to approved products and the supply and the contingency of matching those dollars and supplying them here in Perth or in Australia. So the pressure is certainly on the government to, in our want and in our view, to stimulate the manufacturing industry, to get the plastic manufacturers, to get the woodworking, to get all the welders at that top end, and even the car manufacturers to put some dollars in and get that going, because that supply chain currently, if this continues for any greater length of period other than 5 or 6 months, then it's going to put pressure on all of those things, let alone the car parts for warranties and claims and all those kind of things. So we're dealing in that space now, not only for franchisors, but generally supply products.
The small business WA government website actually has a real good business continuity planning checklist. So it's worthwhile having a look at that website as well if you're unsure on what to do and what sort of things to look at. And that talks about your suppliers and what you're going to do there to lock that down. So they're all good techniques, tools to have a look at.
Great. Okay, and John, we're going to have to leave it there. It's coming up 11 o'clock Western Standard Time. So, ladies and gentlemen, please thank our panel. John Durazio, Managing Director from Walker Wayland, our accounting guru. Dean McCaskill, our BDA leasing specialist. Carolyn Megan, partner at Hodgkin Hanley Lawyers for our legal and employment issues, and yours truly in charge of strategy and operations. What I will ask, if you've got any more questions, please send them in via email. I'll endeavour to get them out to the panelists and we'll come back to you as soon as we can. We are going to do this weekly, so we will probably do another group chat, Skype group chat meeting next week so we can keep the communication going. And if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to give me a call. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, listeners. Hope you have a wonderful day. Take care, be safe, wash your hands, and until next time, I'm Mark Fernandez, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Matt.